Okay, cool. Excellent. Always a positive feature when life goes to plan. Let's just move that cursor from ends life, because that wouldn't be quite where we wanted to go. And let's see where we've got up to. Excellent. There we go. Let me just make sure. Yeah, we've got a sound, so that should be good. Excellent. So I'm a little bit early, and that's just okay. Of course it's okay. There we are. We can just pop that down, and we'll just wait and see what happens, and whether a little bit. There we are. There we are. There we are. So it always takes a bit for things to sort themselves out. Let's just ink up that while the going is good, and let's fish a mat, a little acrylic plate out while the going is good, and I'm just going to pop some stamps onto there, and the plan is that I will keep them on there so I know what I'm doing. Good evening, Connie. Welcome, my darling. Welcome, welcome. Always appreciate it. So I'm in my conservatory today. I have the doors open because it was really very warm. And I live not far from Manchester Airport, so the noise is, we've just heard, would have been a plane taking off. And we might get a few more of those, but hopefully it's not too distracting. Good afternoon, Sheila. Welcome on this beautiful, beautiful day. Good afternoon, Dee. Thank you for joining us today. So, I've done a bit of prep because I just needed a little bit of comfort zone to know just how much paper I had left, and I will show you at the end of the live just how much paper I have left from my original 8x8 paper pad, and hopefully will have then proven that you can make an entire album that looks beautiful from scratch with a bit of basic cardstock and just one pad of paper. As I said last time, one of the headaches for Stamperia papers is that you get lots of fussy cut elements, and that chews through 3 or 4, lots of pieces like this, and it really does then chew through all of your papers, so that's not the most helpful. So out of an 8x8 Stamperia pad, 3 pages at least end up as not suitable for background pages. So at the end of last live, I'll get rid of that. We had some pieces, and the magnets were on these pieces, and I have a plan for those, obviously. But we had 2 flat pages, one at the front of the book here and one at the back of the book that don't have any magnets, and I said that I would work on a way to secure that flap so it doesn't move when you don't want it to. And adding magnets is something that you just need a little bit of experience with, a little bit of practice, and to think about how you're going to use them. And I've had to swap my magnets to ones that are much smaller because I'd run out of the bigger ones and didn't check, so I haven't been able to reorder some of the 10mm ones. So I've got 0.5 millimetre wide, so they're not so big. So I'm just going to pop that over to the side, and then we're going to have a little bit of a play. to pop things together. So I'm wanting to put to secure under my flap a little fold out piece. Okay. So this is, well, let's measure it for you, and then I can write it down on I'm sure I can find some scrap card. Yeah, we've got some scrap card, and I've got a pen. So this piece of card is, let me just measure it in inches. So it's about 5 inches tall. So that direction, it's 5 inches, approximately 12.3 centimetres that way. And in this direction, it is 11.5 inches. So this way, it's 11.5 inches, and that equates to approximately 29.5 centimetres. And that's why I'm using the inches, but it doesn't matter which way. And then I have scored it 4 inches, so here and 8 inches. So this gives me 3 panels, but actually in the book there will be 4 panels for decorating, and I've deliberately chosen to do it this way because it's just, well, it makes life easier. And I've got a flat panel then for the front, and I can open it and open out. Does that make sense? And that means I will be putting a magnet onto here. But for the meantime, let's start about, because I'm on, I'm trying to conserve paper because I didn't have masses and masses of paper left. So, so that piece is going to be, that bit will be folded in, so I need to put something onto each of these. So I've just cut some pieces of card that will fit into these spaces. Yeah, like that. Just giving me a tiniest border of black. That will focus in, and that's going to go onto there. And I've got some pattern paper for the other side. I'm glad it's nice for you, Connie. That's always lovely to hear. My birthday is far away. What is it? Oh, that's lovely. That is very lovely. But that will be very hard, I think, to not do. Good afternoon, Anthony. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So that piece of card can go over there, out of the way. So we've got 4 pieces of card that I'm going to use to decorate the inside of that fold out panel, and the fold out panel is just going to help me to add extra pieces to the piece. That's it. So two are slightly smaller, 2 of those that can go there. I'm going to pop that over there. I obviously would like these to all coordinate with my album, but I don't want to put masses of paper on each of these when my intention is ultimately for it to be covered by by photographs, really. But I do, until it gets covered, I do want it to have a little bit of interest. Now then, have I got enough room around me? Of course not. Of course not. Of course not. So let's just pop that, and I've got lots of bits and pieces. So let me just pop that album base on the floor, out of harm's way, and then we can pop these out, and we can treat these for are going to ultimately be photomats in the same way. And I've got a little a stencil which has got some text, some postage stamps, and I've got my brown ink that I used on the last one. So vintage photo, it's one of my go-tos. So we're just going to add some little bits of things. So those can go in the book like that. That's going to go in the book like that. That can go on the other side. So let's just do a little bit of lining up. Don't have to be exactly precise. They're not going to sit next to each other. So let's just add just a little bit of stenciling. Oops, we didn't really want that to go over, but hey ho, such is life. We can deal with that. And we'll add a little bit more down there. And of course this is water reactive ink, so that's equally quite helpful. There we are. Let's just add a little bit more text over onto that one. We'll add a little bit of postage stamp onto there, and let's just add a bit more text up onto there, and then I'm just going to grab a little wet wipe and I can lift off carefully that I made a mess of. And that's the joy of using distress oxides. If I'd done that with a permanent ink, then clearly that isn't gonna happen. And let's just take this last piece. So we're going to work on all of these at the same time, so that's going to go. So let's just have that piece over there, and we'll add that bit over there. There we are. So it's just adding a little bit of detail into those pieces, and then I'm going to add, I've just got some stamps here, and my intention is to keep them controlled. Generic text stamps, there's lots of them to choose from, so you know, go with the flow. And so this is the waterproof ink from Stamperia. So let's just add some little bits of this into here. Let me come down a bit so that that's more in the process, and then we can just add, there we are. Let's just move these in. So we're just going to add little bits of stamping into here, build up a little bit of detail. Doesn't have to be perfect stamping, just needs to be adding some interest into the pages, because this is the look that I absolutely love when I am creating. If you prefer a plain photomat to go into your pieces, then obviously just use something that's completely plain. This is a little postage stamp, so I think that's quite a prudent for an album based on travel. So let's just add some bits of that into here, and of course we can add in, and you can use, I will then keep these stamps consistent throughout my make, so to give it some degree of cohesion. But you do you. If you prefer to have a more random selection of pieces, then that's also absolutely grand. Okay. And I inked the edges of my papers, so I am going to ink the edges of these pieces again for consistency. There we are. And then we might just we'll add some extra bits of those fussy cuts, because we can, once they're in place, and then we can just add some embellishments. We will be coming back to some of this along the way, and I wanted to add in just another element, because why not? So I have picked from a Stamperia their mixed media aqua colours in Verde and antique rose, and we're just going to add a few splatters along the way. So let's see who's coming that we've missed. Good afternoon, Jan. I missed you coming in, I apologise. Hello, Alison, thank you very much. Just keeping very well. Good afternoon, Julie. Good afternoon, Deborah. So let's just add a little bit of blue splatter. Oops, or a lot of blue splatter, as the case may be. Yeah, but that's fine. It'll just add to the pieces. And if I'm not very careful, I will send it all. So I'm just going to keep to one colour on a page, because otherwise I think it will become just a wee bit too too busy. Right, what did I not do? I did not put my ink gun on. That's also always clever, isn't it? But if I don't just give these a little bit of a blast, then we're going to have a mess. But this is just a nice way. It just adds just an extra touch. Add it, don't add it. You know, the options are endless when you're making for yourself. So let's just give these, it won't take very long to dry. And I'm sure, you know, just because I've used the Stamperia aquacolors, actually you could use diluted distress oxide inks mixed with a bit of water and a splatter brush, or you could just as easily use any spritzer spray and just to add some splatters with whatever you happen to have in your stash to hand. And we might be doing this quite a lot because this is going to be consistent throughout the whole day. Well, I think it might well be a very beautiful day for a craft along. I haven't got any lights on. I've got the doors open at the end of the conservatory because it was really way too hot in here earlier on for my liking. And we definitely have got some rinse and repeats, so time for people to process what we're doing. But yeah, these are techniques that you'll see me use really quite frequently in my makes. So there we are. So let us just add. There we are. That's just got a little bit of an edge, and that's fine. You choose the size and amount of edge that you want for your make, suitable to you. Try to keep it reasonably consistent. I tend to keep it to about 1/2 centimetre when I'm reducing the size of my mats, but it doesn't really matter if it's a bit more or a bit less. There we are. Let's just unblock that, which was unblocked first thing this morning when I set out to prep, but there we are. So let's just add. So contrary to popular belief, I am not using Cosmic Shimmer Glue, though I do think it's great news that the Cosmic Shimmer brand has been taken up. I'm just using a Cosmic Shimmer bottle that I have then decanted a cheaper glue into, and I'm finding it's working very, very nicely. So yeah, and this is just giving me an applicator because the bottle that it comes in just isn't very neat and tidy, and I would end up with a mountain of glue every which way if I didn't do this. There we are. So it's just giving me that little border. Do need to be moderately careful having used distress inks for the stenciling, because it will smudge if we're not careful. So let's just pop that one into here. There we are. Yeah, absolutely. So what are you in the middle of making, Julie? I can hazard a guess that Dee's making a junk journal. Might be wrong, or she could be generating some beautiful AI images, because she's also a whiz at doing that too. There we are. So that can go into there. We'll just pop that down. So I haven't had to use any paper on that bit of it, which was the name of the game. But that doesn't mean that I won't have a nice, big, obvious places to put my photomats. I'm very conscious that making a memory album can really stack up in terms of price, particularly when a maker uses multiple packs from. It just becomes extremely expensive. So that is going to go into my book like that, and it's going to open out like that. I might just want a little bit of extra detailing on here, and at this point I can pick I could pick some words. Let me just find the words, or I could just pick maybe a little suitcase I rather like that. So let me just add that. So these have all been cut from the pages, and I'm not going to pop them onto every single page. I'm just going to scatter them throughout now, and then when I know what I've got left at the end of the when I've put it all together, then I can go through and add extras, say into the inside of there. And I do have some extra pieces because I've got the rubons, so those can also be added as I want to. So let me just pick my base book up, endeavour not to throw everything around, and then we're going to show you how we're going to secure this in place. We've already lost pieces. Cool, or not cool as the case may be. Never mind, we can cut another piece for that, because where's it gone? Oh, there, that might be where it's gone. And I know spot the schoolgirl error as to why I had another piece of card out. So do forgive me. So and while I'm at it, I will go back to these. So so that's okay, we can do that, and then we'll come back to a bit more inking and stamping, because it's all a bit boring otherwise. So I know that I want to pop this onto my page. I'm never afraid of covering up my pieces, and I'm just going to use this piece onto here, and then we're going to have a little bit. So before I pop that on there, I'm going to take my book. I need a magnet on here, and because I've only got diddy size magnets today, rather than the bigger ones that I was using last week, I'm actually going to pop a little strip of double-sided tape there, and grab a pair of scissors, because they are little magnets today, but also this will keep it flatter. I can tell you, they're really diddy, really diddy. Let's just pop that onto there. I haven't got a magnet on that side, so that's cool. So I can pop one up there, that can go onto there, that can go there, that can go there. So I've got one on top of each other there. I'm going to pop this book into here now. Okay, if I pop this into here, let's grab that glue, and if I wanted, I could put it as a with a tuck spot. So let's just do that. Whether I use it as a tuck spot is another matter. Okay, but let's just do it, because then it just gives you options for tucking in extra things. So 3 sides for there. Square that up onto there, and let's just give that glue just a little bit of time to grab. Okay. So I'm now going to pop some glue onto those magnets, and if I just lift that over, don't want it tight, pop that onto there. The glue is going to transfer to where I need to put my tape on this piece of the book. It's a cool trick, and it definitely does make for things being very much easier. Let's just stick those magnets out of harm's way. Flying magnets are quite dangerous, so we'll pop that on there, and we'll pop that onto here. So that's covering those pieces, and then we'll start the torturous chamber of picking off the bits of glue, because we always it's just enough. There we are, that red line of tape's actually come off there reasonably nicely. Okay, and now I can take my magnet and pop it onto there, and I'm putting the glue side to the glue side so that I know that those will then click, yeah. And because it's wet, of course it hasn't set, but that's fine. I can pop that into there, pop that back down there. These are nice, strong, you can hear them. Pop that into there. Hope that we've not messed that up in the process. And then I can add in my piece of paper over the top that I have nicely inked. And that will just then hold everything in. See, we've not got very many people watching this afternoon. Very wise. So through the summer, do we want the lives kept at this time of the day, or would we prefer them at a later time of the day? There we are. So let's pop that there. As I say, we are going to have rinse and repeat, and that's absolutely fine. There we are. That can go there, that can go there, that can sit over there. And let's just take these pieces. So I've got a piece for the back of my flap and 2 tags to go in. So let's just pop that over there. These 3 pieces here, that's going to go in there. And these are now in the orientation that I'm going to have them in the album. So that will alter the way that I add and feel about my stenciling and my stamping, because yeah, I want it to be the correct way round, she says. There we are. Oh, she says. So I know that these 2 are going to be tags in the pocket. That's going to be there, and by doing them like this, I know it's sort of rinse and repeat, but actually it's just going to allow me then to have my pieces. There we are. We'll pop that over there. With the text the way I want it, rather than upside down, back to front, or inside out. And it can also be where I want it, which is also quite cool. Now these pieces are going to be tags, or just pull outs, and I'm just going to corner around these edges of the pull out pieces. There we are. And we'll corner around this piece because it will work better. There we are. And then I can add. So it's just about thinking about what you're going to do and the orientation of your pieces, and that will definitely help with how how things sit and feel in your album. That's going to tuck in, so I don't need more there. And this one's a bit little, so let's just have that set of text there. And well, why not just add a little bit of a line and some numbers down there. Okay, and then we'll come back to our thing. As I say, my intention is to come back and forth and use the same sets of stamps consistently. I sort of quite like these scripty stamps that are difficult to read, but that's my choice. But yeah, you could use something that is more more graphic, if that's also what you wanted. There we are. Choose what you've got. Certainly don't go buying one specifically for this. Yeah, there's lots of script stamps in the Stamperia collections, and you definitely don't need tons and tons and tons of them. So let's just pop that over there. That piece is going to be on there, so let's just pop that over there. And you'll notice I tend to go off the sides of my pieces, so I don't necessarily always get whole images. That side definitely does have it right up and around, but that's also okay. So just mix it up, have fun, play with what you're doing. Right, let's just pop those over there. And there we are. We've got all three of these, so we'll just give these a little bit of an ink, There we are. So those are the tags for going in the pocket, and this is going to go onto the inside of that flap. And I might just want to add some extra detail onto that, so that just so that it's all fits together. So let's see what we've got. I'm going to pop that in there. So let's pop that. So if I bring this over here, there we are. We're going to pop this piece into here, onto there. So let's just grab a little bit of glue. Is everyone quiet, or is Facebook not showing me my comment feed today? It does that on occasions. It's very, very frustrating. And yeah, then but here we are. We've now got those pieces in, and what was actually quite thin cardstock has now been thickened because I've added some 300 GSM cardstock into there, and that works for me. And then we've just got a little extra piece, so I'm going to pop that onto there, and I'm going to deliberately choose not to glue it all down, because then if I want to put a photograph in, I can just flick it under. There we are, but that will work over there. So let's just get that to dry in there before we close it. There we are, that can go there. So let's see what we're going to do with these. These two are going to slip into the pocket on the cover. Now, so let's just have a little look and see what we've got. So, having chosen all the papers for all the way through, this little caboodle here, all the remnants that I had left over. Okay, so that's also cool, isn't it? But actually I think I'm going to grab the rubons at this stage, and I have to first, I have gone and had a little hunt and found some extra bits from a very old collection, so we're going to take advantage of that on the mission Use Up the Bits, because the words seem to me to work. So there we are, we've got Journey. So this is an old collection. Let's just pop that up onto there. So sometimes it just doesn't take very much for you to have something that will work for you. It's fine, Jan. I sometimes, so on my phone, I think the comments are updating. When I go live, they should be updating on my computer, but they don't always, which is a tad on the frustrating side. And there we are. So as I say, these come from a very old collection, probably 3 years old. But you know, you could actually, let's just chop that into two. You could, she says, quite happily, I think, stamp some words. That would work, wouldn't it? You don't have to necessarily have to there we are, to have rub-ons for this. A stamped set of words would work quite nicely, and there are lots of paper cutouts, but as I say, we're on mission Use Up for me, so that this is going to work. Don't like throwing things away. I do gift on stuff that I'm no longer needing, or rehome it to fellow crafters, but that's also cool. So we can keep that. We don't need much on those for the time being. Remember, I can always come back and add, but I want there to be a flow through the book, if that makes sense. So remember when I did this, I was maximising the use of my papers, and so let's just pop that lid onto there so we don't make a mess. Right, maximising the use of my papers, and so I made a little pocket, so that will sit into there, and that one can sit into there. We're going to add a bit of decoration here, So let's come back. So that is now clicked nicely into there. And the eagle eyes will see that I've got a page here, and I did have a whole page left, but I didn't like it particularly, and so I have decided that I was going to just, I don't know why I've just done that, but hey ho, but that will work. So we're going to add a little pocket onto here, because there's lots of tuck-in cards and spots in the piece, and I can then add some extra detail. So the intention is to say that we don't have to have everything all of the time completely matchy. You can mix and match things. So that's the plan anyway amongst here. And of course a rub-on would go over this perfectly well without any problems. So I might just London Post, see, that will work. Or I could add a little ticket onto the top of there. So let's just, because otherwise it's going to be a bit boring, and I might actually not want a whole piece. So you'll see me quite often do things like this, like chop things into pieces. So that is just going to occupy there. I just need to be careful over that, over the magnet. So the 10mm ones I was using last week are not as deep as these 5mm deep ones. So that can go onto there, and let's just take another one of these, and there's a green word here, so we'll add the green word, but we will use some of the Art of Travel rub-ons elsewhere. There we are. So that can go onto there, and it just means that that's not plain. It just adds a bit of detail. Now you could use some embossing ink, prior to putting it in your journal, and and add some text stamp and emboss onto it. That would also work, just to add some extra detail. There we are. That can go there. And then we've got this little scrap. So it's one of the border pieces. Just a little scrap, so we can add that three-sided bit of glue. Let's pop that into there, like so, because that just works. There we are. Let's just move some of this out of the way. But that's now, that flap is now stopping this from opening, and it adds for me 4 places, 5 places for photographs there, and I've got double sides here, so 2, 4 there, and actually I could stick more pieces into there if I really wanted to. So in the paper collection we have some little bits, so that says good luck. It doesn't matter that it's going to stick out, that's fine. It's from the single-sided papers, so let's just pick that and let's put this, that into there. So that's 2 pieces into there, just from the pieces in the book. They've got little words on them, so that's fine. They're going to sit in there quite nicely, and that will open, and it just is, that's a space either for writing, but equally 2 more photographs on the back, and a bigger one if you want to, into there. So you can use what you want for there. So let me just give those a little bit of an ink, because it will irritate me if I don't. And I don't need to add any more. If you wanted these to be more robust, then of course you could put back these onto some black cards. Yeah, okay. That's no problem, Dee. There we are. So that goes in there. So we've just got some extra interest, and I want to do something else here, because that's all looking a bit boring at the moment. So let's see what we've got, what we have. She says, we've got all sorts on this desk. All sorts. Now you can add this in or leave it out or do what you want. It's entirely up to you. Let's see what we've got. We've got words. These pieces all come from that collection. So let's just pop that over. And now, of course, I've got 25 tons of rubbish, aka bits and pieces, all around me that I now need to sort my way through. So those are all those pieces. So those can sit together. We've got words. We've got those. So let's see what we've got in this collection. Let's pick up the words and put these together because that will make life easier. Travelling with... and then we can just choose something that we think will work. There we are. The world turns when you start moving. Yeah, well, that's true. A different walk, changing environment. Okay. The adventure begins when the journey begins. That seems like a nice idea to me. There we are. So lots of different bits here and some strips of paper. So I'm just gonna, I want to add just something extra down here so it's not quite as flat as it might seem. And now I'm going to pick up that pile of leftover bits of paper. She says, there we are. So these are my scraps of paper. This is what's left of that paper, bar one extra piece. So let's just see what we've got that we can add just to anchor that in place. I don't have a problem with because it looks a bit lonely on its own. So let me just chop. So I am now just going to use up the bits that I've got left lying around. Okay, and I've got lots of those bits. I don't like the brown border on this. I know you can't see that off live, but there we are. We can pop that there, get rid of that. So we're just going to literally now start using our way through these pieces. I don't have a problem with that flapping over onto there, but that's going to sit nicely there. It's just going to add an extra little bit of detail onto there. Let me just pop that permanent ink pad out of the way. There we are. So we're just going to add some little bits. So that piece can go onto there. And of course, at this stage, ladies, just be... Ooh, there we are. Let's just move that camera a little bit. Well, actually, maybe that with the way that's angled, it's actually better. So we'll add a little bit of glue onto here so that we're not going to end up with it splurging where we don't want. That can go there. Okay. And then we are definitely on mission use up. So my go-to really, isn't it, is to add some bits of laces to things. So let's just pop that there. This little bit of grungy lace. That can sit on there. I think like so. And I've got a whole collection of chipboards here that I've had for eons. They come from a Stamperia collection. So, but there's lots of elements in here, so I can just pop these out, and you can colour them, you can emboss them, you can keep them plain. The option is entirely yours. Just give them, they're all held in by little pips, so just give them a gentle wiggle and those pips will break. And I've got multiple packets, so I can afford to be rather generous. Okay, so I'm going to pop that into there because I think that's going to look rather quite nice there, and it's just going to add just a little bit of extra detail. And that's what I mean by when I was doing my inserts and add-ons. There we are. So let me pop that there. We can now just pop some little bits of glue onto that piece of chipboard. Definitely don't want the glue going onto my pullouts. So that can sit there and grab quite nicely. I can then pop that onto there. I think that will work quite nicely. Doesn't need to be anchored very well. There we are. there we are. So let's just grab that so it sits down nicely. It isn't going to catch every time I open the book up. Okie-dokie. And I'm sort of, I'd like it, but I don't like it. Does that make any form of sense? Of course it doesn't make any form of sense. Why would that make any form of sense to anyone apart from my brain? Because, you know, because my brain's a dangerous place, isn't it? There we are. So actually I'm going to start adding some extra bits onto here, just as an extra bits of detail, because that's the way the cookie crumbles. There we are. I've got lots of this. I can ink this piece. There we are. Let's just pop that onto there. As I say, there isn't a right and there is definitely not a wrong to any of this. It's about what works for you. So in that part, I've got multiple of these. I tend to aim, if I'm going to do this, I tend to aim for one piece of chipboard per page. So that often means that I need more than one pack. Now, why have I put that over there? I've put this here because when I turn that page, it's going to sit against this bit, not get in the way, and then I can pop this piece, which I have inked, onto there. So for me, this is about keeping my embellishments so that they are all consistent through the pages. There we are. So let's let that in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 photographs. More if you want. Can now go into there quite happily. And I'm going to keep inside there relatively simple. I could add a rubon because we've got them. Okay, so what have we got here? This is our opening pocket page created, and this is just a plain page, and I want a decent sized photomat to go on there, and I want something to pop in the pocket for here. So I have taken a scrap of card that is 9 centimeters by approximately 25, and then folded it in half, and it's just giving me a card that I can put into there. And of course I could put more photographs in there, that's never going to be an issue. So let's just tuck that out of the way, and we'll go over to rinse and repeat, because rinse and repeat is always good, isn't it? Here we are. Because I'm putting this in as a card and not as a tag, I don't need to round those corners, she says, getting ink over everything because she's left the lid off her ink. So let's just pop that over there. Now we've got way too many bits on this desk, all in the way. In the way. When I forget, I've put my roll of tape on the floor next to me. Okay, so that is going to go into there. The card is going to have a piece of paper on the front that I've cut, but I'm going to need to decorate the inside and the outside and the back of this. Okay, so let's just pop this there, and again it leaves spaces for the photographs, but it adds some interest along the way. So let's just, that can go out of the harm's way, that can go over there. Let's clear the decks because we've got way too many bits on this desk, just to cause chaos and confusion. So let's just add, and I definitely prefer the Distress Oxide for adding through the stencils, but if you like something else, you choose something else, that's also not a problem. So this is another one of those go-to stencils, isn't it? You know, very neutral, don't matter what's in it. Okay. So outside is going to have paper on it. Let me just, while the going is good, ink that edge. Ink that edge. We'll add some, come back to our other stamps in a minute. Let's just add that all the way around for consistency, because that's what it's like. There we are. I'll pop that into there. So this might seem a bit strange, the comment I'm going to make, but I'm a bit mixed mediaed out. So that's why I am choosing to, and I'm also trying to use up stuff, because that's also cool. Right, so that's the stenciling added onto there, and let's come back to those, the archival ink. And I'm using the archival ink for this bit of stamping just because she says just because it's easier and you get better detail. There we are. Let's just add some stamping across there. So this immediately adds 3 more pieces for photographs onto here. There we are. Cool. Let's just stick that over there for the moment. And let's pop that onto this and go back to our archival ink. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we are. There we are. Just adding little bits. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's pop that up the right way. There we are. There we are. Okay. Let's turn that over, because inconsiderately, when you put when you've got a piece that is a card, you've got multiple sides. I know, strange that, isn't it? Very strange that. That's going to be good, isn't it? We're going to have to replace that shortly, but hey ho. And I know that this is repetitive, but actually it's just, you know, it keeps it, for me, it keeps my make looking nice. Okay, as I say, if you don't like it, you do you. There we are. She says bits of paper. I do have stuff every which way off camera that you cannot see. I do try to not work in a complete mess. There we are. So that can go there, that can go there. We do have a piece of paper for that. Let's just give that a squidge down. Let's just pick up that stamp. I know we're swapping and messing about, but that's the joy, isn't it? Yeah, this isn't a process that you should necessarily be, you know, rushing. It is a process for enjoying and taking your time and creating something that you love. As I say, if you would prefer not to have the details added and you like your photomats and your things completely plain, then that's what you do. That's what you do. Okay. So that is just a piece of paper from that paper collection. Is it my favourite? Now let's be honest. The honest answer is no. It's definitely not my favourite. But it's what I had, so it's what's being used. So that can go into there. And I can create more if at the end of the, you know, when I've put the main pieces into each of these pockets, I can then add more as I want to. I did keep back right at the beginning the pieces of paper that I wanted to use for the covers, so I know I've got those. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. Right, that's definitely seen better days, hasn't it? That's that one, cream cream crackered. So let's just swap that over. There we are. That will work. That will work. So as I say, I'm not the greatest fan of that piece of paper. I'm just not. It don't really work for me. So let's just add a bit of faff and finoodle to it. Yeah, I know it's going to sit in the book and not all of it's going to be visible, but that's also okay. Use what you have. Don't stress over what you haven't got. And don't go buying another pad of paper just for one other bit. No problem. No problem, Connor. You do enjoy your walk. It's a night. It'll be a lovely day, I think, because you said earlier it was beautiful, didn't you? Yeah. So I am using, Deborah. I'm using Dress My Craft corner rounder because it has a 7mm, 4mm, and a 10mm angle, and I'm using the 7mm for this, and these are relatively easy to pick up. I do have ones that are only single-sided, but that one just will work for me. Good morning, Betty. How is the USA today? Are you nice and warm, or are you freezing cold? The weather over here is beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful it is. There we are. So that can go onto that. There we are, there we are, there we are. So that to me now works better than it did with just the piece of paper. But remember, I'm using up scraps. So, yeah, when I've done this, it is purely about using scraps. So let's give that over there to dry. And I'm going to pop that one into my album, and we're going to do the same trick. I'm going to pop this into here. I like these, the houses. The text is fine. And remember, just as I put the trifold in, creating a pocket, I'm picking an extra pocket here, because again, that will allow me, if I want to pop extra pieces in. And this is 5 by 3 3/4, and you can choose then what size picture you want. Oh, I'm sorry you've got rain. It's absolutely glorious in the UK. So that piece is going into there. That piece is going into there. So that's space for 3 photographs, and that's space for another, and I could pop another one into there if I want to. So let's, again, for consistency, let's add some extra bits of detail onto this so that the whole pieces work together. So I've used, we'll add a little bit of lace over to there. I'm rather liking this, so I may not add very much onto here, purely because I like, do I like that? Yeah, why not? Well, let's just pop that little bit on there, but I don't want to add too much onto that side because I want those little Dutch houses to really shine. So we'll add that as a little bit of an embellishment onto there. There we are. And then we're going to add some bits onto here, and then we'll see what we've got elements wise from the paper collection, because why not? Walk in a different walk, changing environment. You see, that's nice, and it echoes those houses, so that's also cool. And then let's just pick up a piece from here. So this is this same pack of chipboards that I had. Wriggle, I can see it's held by a pip there. Wriggle, wriggle, that will help that fall out. There must be another pip, so I'm wriggling close to where the pip is that's holding it in place, and then I can just pop it out. You do need to be somewhat careful, otherwise you do what I've just done. which is breaking, but that's also fine, because for this one it really won't matter very much. I think this paper collection is lovely, so I'm just going to anchor the bottom of that to there. I'm going to pop these onto here. That can go into there. I'm deliberately not adding floral pieces. I could, you know, if you've got little clay pieces, you could do that. But sometimes I think that you're better off not trying to add too many different pieces. There we are. That can go onto there. That can go onto there. That can go down. And I haven't done my splatters. Naughty me, because that will cause chaos. And I do want it to be consistent, so I'm going to actually I'm going to add the rose ones onto this side, because there's quite a lot of pinks in that, and it will settle down. Oops, she says, maybe I didn't quite want quite so much. It won't matter if it goes onto the page, it'll just link everything together. So let's, and I'll need to do the other side of that. So let's just let this settle down. There we are. So that's all we need to do. Yeah, just put these pieces together. So who prefers it if I do a mixed media piece? And who prefers it if I make an album? I am aware, incidentally, by putting that embellishment there, I've made that gap smaller for putting things in, but that's also just fine. Well, it's the joy of working in the conservatory, Betty, allows me to really appreciate the outdoors at this time of the year. It's rather lovely. So, album for you, Betty. Yeah, okay. But then I make you do things that retreats that push you outside the comfort zone. We might be here forever and a day while I get this strap. You like both? Well, that's, yeah. It's just difficult to mix media for you, Julie. Yeah. See, it's just difficult to know, isn't it? What to do, what to do. So let's just soften that colouring down a little bit. There we are, and then we can add a little bit of splatter onto there. And then you like both. Your preference is mixed media, but you like both. There we are. I guess a bit of splatter don't really count as mixed media, does it? No. I forever get cross with people saying that if you have papers and Stamperia, it's mixed media. You love creating me. Oh, thank you very much. I think sometimes at retreats it's easier because we provide everything for you. So you don't need all the paints, pastes and mediums at home. Wow. This album may end up going over multiple lives. But that's fine. It's fine. You know. I don't have a problem with doing that. That's dry. So that can go back in there. Okay. So that is those. Now then, what have we got here? Oh joy! That'll be more pages. So these are the pages where I've put I've made a pocket. Yeah. When I was creating these, I put my maggots underneath, and that will flick down and click into paste. But that leaves me with a pocket to put pieces into. Let's just pop those somewhere safe over there. And it's the same process in both sides, yeah? Okay, and they're going to go landscape. Okay. So, and then we're on mission use up. We really are on mission use up what we have. Okay. So, yeah. So I had scraps of paper left, yeah, and so I have thought, remember I created a landscape pocket last time? Ooh, she says that didn't go in very nicely. It's always a mistake when you do that and you don't end up with it nice, but hey ho, let's just add a little bit of a freehand swirl into that. That's my bad. Okay, and then let's work this one out. So I'm definitely using up scraps here, okay, because it's good to use up scraps. So when I was working my way through this album, I reserved pieces for the front and the back cover, yeah, because that sort of makes sense to me, yeah. And then I've added my flaps and my pieces. So I've used, where I had bigger areas, I then, you know, covered those areas first, and then I had to look and see what I had left, what scraps were there that were going to be big enough. And to be fair, the one I have got a whole page, but I've got 2 whole pages, ladies. I've got this one and this one. I like that an awful lot, and I might use it for something completely different. This one I'm really not sure about, so I thought I might just leave those completely whole for the time being, and then I can build these pieces. So I'm now working on a process of building page cover pieces using the scraps and pieces that I had. That makes sense. So that can now sit onto there, and then I shall have to shift my lazy bottom off the chair and retrieve the piece that I've thrown on the floor. Okay. Because that will work from here, and then let's just add that into here, because that can go on there. Okay, and then let's mirror that with different pieces of paper. It's probably nearly your tea time, isn't it, Dee? I would have thought. There we are. That can go onto there. There we are. Let's just slide that down. But it's just an easy way of, you know, thinking about it. Adding pockets and flaps is really, the doors are lovely on that piece of paper. They really are. And I undoubtedly will think of a use for them, but which is why I've left it as a plain piece. There we are. So that can go onto there. Okay. Cool. So that can go there and there. And then I want these to be compatible with the rest of the book, which requires, in my mind, to add some extra bits and pieces. So, I'm not a great fan of that bit, the tram car there, so I can add that bit onto there. Now, when I close this, if I'm not careful, if I put that onto there, these two are going to butt up against each other. So we might be better off adding a decorative element at the top of here for this one. Okay, and then let's just grab a little bit more of this pesky chipboard. Wriggle, 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 you will fall out. That can sit up there. Let's just take this piece. Now this is a long piece in this piece of paper, but actually I can chop it up. There we are. So let's just break that off, and that little piece can go onto there, and then we'll find some more bits and pieces. So let's just pop that off to the side, get rid of that museum word, not that I really dislike it. Let's just pop this piece onto here. There we are. That can go there. I know that's making my pocket slightly smaller, but that's okay, because you don't have to use it as a pocket if that's not what you want to do. There we are, that can go onto that. And then let's just find some words before we come back into there. We are making progress. We're actually making reasonable progress. We might not be here all day, but there we are. So we've got a little door there, and let's see if we can find a word, a set of words. Yeah, okay, so I've got that. This is just a door from the 8x8 areas for fussy cutting. All of the colours will coordinate inevitably because they've all come from the paper collection. That door sort of mimics the fact that we've got houses. Just relax, because that's what you do on holiday, isn't it? Well, that's what you should be doing on holiday. And then let's just pop that over there. So you definitely do need to think about where you're putting dimensional elements when you're doing this. Good afternoon, Katarzyna. Welcome, welcome, welcome. There we are, that can go onto there. There, so a set of words. I like words, in case we haven't worked out. I like words. The thrill of feeling like you've seen the world. Travelling enriches the soul. I think I prefer that. The other one is a little bit too deep for my thought processes. And I could put, yeah, if I really wanted to, I could put some twine or things into these pieces, but I haven't got twine anywhere else in the book, so I'm not going to. There we are. And I'm keeping these on the pieces because clearly that's one there, and I'm going to add that little camera, and I'm adding that because I don't like that transition here between that tag and there, and this is just going to break that right at that hard angle out, but still allow me to see the words. So that sort of makes sense to my brain. Might not make sense to everyone else's brain, but it does to my brain. Okay, so that can go into there. So I have, these come from the collection. Okay, so let's just tuck that into there. That will work. And let's see what else we've got. Actually, we might pop the map into there and that into there, because that's good for me space. So 2 of those tags, and let's just pop, because that one's a bit tighter, we're going to pop just the 1 into there. But I could put, this is another space for more photographs, yeah. And I don't mind that those are off, you know, at an angle, because that's going to work for me. So now I have pockets for the inside of here, so let's just pop that off down onto the floor. Those pieces can dry, and then we can set to making the bits that are going to go on the inside of those pockets. So the back of the flap, where the magnet already is, and bits to pop in to the things. And these are just cut to size, so it depends very much on the size of your album as to what you're going to have and where. So, you know, you do you. So those let's see, 1 2 3, 1 2 3. So let's do them like that. It's just going to be easier from that point of view, and I just need to make sure that I've got the right piece for the right thing. Excellent. So okay, so these are going to pull out. Oops, the 7 so I'm keeping this size exactly the same. All I'm using, Betty, really is the elements from the, you know, from the paper collection that are there, all provided. Now these, why has that decided to do that on me? I'm assuming everyone is still there. Oh yes, I do. I like it when my computer does funny things. There we are, pop that. Now this piece is going to go on the inside of the flap. So if I grab the book, okay, because it's important when you're thinking about this. So that piece here is going to go on there. And that means I need to put my curved pieces on that side, because otherwise we'll be remaking it, which is a possibility, but maybe not what we want to do at this point in time. So we're going to come back to our Distress Oxide ink, and we're just going to add some extra bits of details into these. There we are. Okay. And then we'll add some splatters and some rubons and some bits and pieces. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's all good. It's all good. There we are. Let's just add that all the way down onto there, because it's a little bit. That can go there. And let's just pop that in to there. Okay, so that can go over there. That one's that one for the time being. Let's just grab. There we are. Keep that lid on there. So let's use this archival ink again. Pop this up the right way. I'm getting inky, sticky, mucky fingers, but that's okay. There we are. Endeavour not to make too big a mess. There we are. And now we have lost the Paris stamp in amongst the pickle on there. So let's just pick a different one. It'll be somewhere on the there it is. there we are. So let's just pop that onto there. And we can add some extra bits. There we are. So. And I just always have my pieces so that my stamping is overlapping everything, because that's just what works for me. And obviously you do what works for you. It's just, for me, this adds some extra interest. I've got lots and lots of script stamps in my text and in my stamp. They just, you know, and they're all ones that probably do say something, but are actually quite difficult to read. So that's also quite handy. Let me just, because I didn't ink that over there. There we are. Let's just do that. Pop that over there. Stick that out of harm's way. And then I added extra bits, didn't I, to my pieces. So let's see what we've got as to what I want. Before I do that, let's just take some of this, move those pieces out the harm's way so we don't end up with a pickle. There we are. Those can go over there. That can go over there. Let's just give these a little blast dry. Thank you, Deborah. This is really cool. I just need to get this to dry. We've got, we're actually doing reasonably well, ladies, but we've got, I might cop out for the cover and just do a very simple cover rather than adding anything else very heavy to it. There we are. Because then we might get it finished today. We'll see where we're up to. I might yet change my mind. Changing my mind is a lady's female prerogative, isn't it? Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is. There we are. So let's just pop that there, and let's just mop up that blue, those blue splashes. And I will need to take, I deliberately got out a matte surface today because the the sun was going to really glare if I wasn't very careful. So let's see what we've got. I'd quite like to add something onto that, so it's going to go into there. Okay, and those two are going to go into there. So let's see what we've got rub-on wise. Wow. In amongst the chaos that is on the desk, because there is chaos on there. So we've got those, we've got those, we've got words, we've got some pretty flowers, we've got scraps. We've got ephemera as well, but I think they're too big. So let's see where we're going to go. Let us add a little bit onto here. Let's see what we've got. There we are, 2 pieces for here, 1 piece for there. We'll concentrate on the 2 that are going as the inserts to start with. Okay, and I obviously don't want big pieces at this point because they're going to occupy too big a piece of the pieces. That might work though, mightn't it? Well, it provides a little pull tab. So let's just do that. Let's just, because it's not going to look so very pretty from the other side, but let's just pop that onto there, and then we might be able to just add something else on the back of there. So I'm just literally, I am just using the elements that I have. Yeah, I like words, so that can sit there, and that's going to provide an extra bit of a pull. It's not too terrible. and I can add more onto that if I want to. There we are. So let's see what we've got here. Of the remaining bits and pieces that we have. We could add that one as a pull there. So we literally, these are pieces from the collection. Yeah? Yeah, why not? Why not? Why not indeed? There we are. So we're just using our extra bits as we can. And note that I'm not worried about covering over bits of my stamping. It does not matter. I might just add a little bit extra there though, because it's now a bit boring. There we are. Because I haven't put that into place. That can go there, that can go there. Let's hope that those now aren't too big. So that will sit in there. That can sit in there. So that's 4 pieces of photographs to go there. And then let's have a little think about what I want to pop onto this page. And whether I want to put a paper element, or whether I'm actually going to pick up some more of these words. Let's just pick up wonderful. See, don't be afraid to mix and match your collections. Yeah, just don't. They're there for the use. There we are. That can go onto there. Let's just grab my little bone folder. That can go there. And I've got that part piece of a ticket from earlier on, from that first page, and I'm going to pop that just there. And you think, all of these little bits, but they all add an extra bit of detail, a little bit of extra interest, and to me they just really work. And I'm thinking, why not? I'm thinking, why not? Having to be slightly careful there. There we are. Just add that little floral because I've got it. And because I can. There we are. Okay. So those can go in the bin. That can come back over there. There we are. Can get rid of the tape that is on that magnet holding it in place. Hope and pray that I haven't now got too much bulk in there between all of these pieces for the magnet to work. And if I have, well, it's a bit tough really. But I think it'll be okay. And if it's not, well, is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. There we are. Let's just pop that in, pop that there, pop that there. Yeah, it has grabbed. It has grabbed. Okay, so that's always good, isn't it? So 2 photographs there, possibly more. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 photographs there. You can see how what actually looks like a very busy album, by adding the flips and the flaps, actually then becomes uber functional. And if I want more, I've got all of these pockets, so I can add more in. I'm just not going to have enough paper. That's the bottom line to do that. Okay. So let's go to that other side. There we are. That is that piece. Right. So I'm going to take this. I know. Maybe it isn't that one. That piece of paper is the one I've cut for there, and I need my corners to be rounded on that side. So let's just do that now with that in front of me, so that I know that it's round the right way. And if you don't get it quite right, just have a neaten up for yourself. We can tackle that. It's probably because the paper wasn't cut entirely square in the first place. There we are. Okie dokie. There we are. That can go over there. You see, we really are. I mean, we've still got reasonable numbers of bits and pieces, but we are beginning to bring the bits and pieces under control, which is also always cool, isn't it? So let's come back to where we were. Oh, that's not the ink we want for there. That's the ink we want for there. And let's just add a set of text there. See, I like these stencils that have lots of information, lots of different areas on them, because they just allow you to mix and match and around and choose the bit that you want for each piece that you're using. Hi. Yeah, absolutely, we are flipping and flapping. We are not gusseting. Now ladies, let's take our heads out of the gutter. Now what have I done there? I've popped that round the wrong way. I know I have, because that's going to be upside down now in my journal. But hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, we will go with the flow. It's not worth hugely worrying about. It is going to be worth hugely worrying about. It'll do me head in. Let's just flick it over, and then at least the front will be okay. There we are. Because of the way it's going in the pocket. And what did I say about being careful about how you do things? And I've just, you know, even though I'm very aware of orientation, and I've said that, I've still managed to end up with, you know, stuff not where I want it. What have I done now with my little block that has got, you see, you end up with so much, well, I end up with so much gubbins around. There we are. Stick that there, stick that there, that it becomes impossible. I know. There we are. Let's just pop these out of the way. Flipping and flapping, tuck spotting, because that's just what you have to do, isn't it? Yeah, of course it is. There we are. Don't get ink, archival ink on your fingers, because that makes a mess. Let's just add that. There we are. That can go there. So I've been better behaved than the other week when I couldn't find half of my stuff most of the time. There we are. There we are. So in a set of 3, let's put that safely out of harm's way. And then we've got the same dilemmas for here. And let me have a look at the cutting out pieces. I obviously don't want big pieces. See, and these are quite big pieces on this set, but hey ho, let's just go for it. Because we can always, because we know I do. So these come from the Art of Travelling collection. There we are. So let's just wonky cut that across. Okay, wonky cutting is absolutely allowed. Okay, because that means I can pop. I'm going to pop that piece there because that's what I want. There we are. Pop that onto there. Let's just, yeah, so one piece then becomes 2. one would be. Now, if the ink is still wet, it won't come off very nicely. So let's just take an extra bit out of there. That extra bit out there. So this is even bigger, but that's okay. And I might just put one onto here. So that piece can go over there. That bit can go over there. Just adding extra details, extra layers. Let's get rid of these little bits of scraps of paper that are then in the way. Okie dokie. I think, do I want to add that onto the flap? No. But have I got bits that I can use as flaps or pulls as I did on the other side? Absolutely I have, because there are lots of fussy elements from this. So let's just pop that half on, half off. There's that glue. So that can go onto there. That will act as a pull for that one. Let's just add that one onto there as a pull. There we are. That can go there, that can go there. Let's just glue that one down. And let's see what we've got as something to go onto there. And I think we're going to add, I don't want it quite so far, so I'm just going to chop off the bit that's going to irritate, because you can. So don't be afraid of taking a pair of scissors to pieces of paper and making them do it work for what you want them to work for. There we are. That can go there. Right, let's now come back. Let's clear the gubbins. So you look at this and you think, have you really used lots of stuff? And I have used lots of stuff, but there's still masses more. It's just as well, because we've got a little bit to do. So there is that one. That can go into there. I'm just going to trim that a little bit better. Move that over. There we are, and that will come back into focus, ladies, I'm sure. No, that's just because I'm moving the height and things around. So there we are. I don't understand how people, well, I do actually. When they create, they do their creations and then they edit out all of the mess, or they have everything so planned so that they don't then have to think about it. There we are. That piece can go into there. Yeah. So that's another 5 pieces of that. And I might yet go back and add something onto these. We could do it now. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? Why not? Right, I'll add a little piece of that there. And let's add a piece of that over there. It's just going to add an extra layer of detail just to that edge of that pocket. It's not going to add any bulk, because remember I've already put the bulk onto the fronts of those flaps. But this piece then isn't going to be completely plain, and I'm deliberately popping that onto that black border because it was working for me. So let me move this one over. One of the pages had a big stack of suitcases, and all I've done is chopped it into 3, ladies. Nothing more complicated. And I make no apology for the fact that I am adding layers onto here. There we are. I'm going back through the stamping individually. I could have done it all off the live, I guess, but then you wouldn't see what was going on, and you wouldn't have a necessarily know how to do it. Hello Sarah, welcome my darling. Have you had a nice afternoon? I'm assuming you've been at your mum's, and so I really do hope you've had a fabulous time. So I could add another one of those into there. Okay, so we're back, and we're back with that pesky tram that is really not my favourite thing. So we're going to put a photomat over that because it's going to cover most of it up. And we've got in here another one of those those flappy little card inserts. So let's go with this one. Because we are getting there. So as I said last week, I often will mirror. This isn't an exact mirror because this panel, the pocket on this side here is bigger or taller than the other one, but it doesn't really matter. Yeah. So there we are. We'll just flip that over the other way. Give that another good burnish, because the more burnishing you do, the neater it becomes. And there we are. And then we can add our stenciling and our stamping and some extra bits of information, or not, as the case may be. Right, excellent. So they're going to be vertically orientated. So let's just take this, and you notice that I am definitely right side on. I tend to always go to my right to start with at the top. I do think about it a little bit. I don't necessarily always stick it exactly the same, but to me that means your eye goes from left to right, picks up some interest, then it S's down to pick up some more interest, and it comes back down to a further S at the bottom, if that makes any sort of sense. And then we need some more on the back of you, and this is a smaller piece, so we might just do a little frame there and a little frame there for that piece, rather than the full S, because there's just not necessarily room for a full S shape all the way through. And the same for this one. We're going to anchor top and bottom. There we are. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. Right, let's come back to these stamps, and there we are. Pop that over there, put the lid on that, pop that over there. I've still got a surprisingly large amount of ephemera sitting on this desk, and it's useful. And I do have the cut apart pad from this collection, but I don't particularly want to use that at the moment. There we are. There we are. Someone is burning some. Does that smell like weed? There'll be some oink, no doubt, at the back. There we are. Let's just flip that over. Excuse me for being lazy, but not putting that on a mat. There we are. There we are. We've got another piece of paper that I really don't like, but that's okay. We'll be tackling that in a minute. There we are. Excellent, she says, having splurged brown onto there where she doesn't want it. So let's just lid that, pop that over there. Right, we used blue last time. let's just take some of those pieces, move them out of the way so we don't have too much of a pickle, and then let's just add a little bit of that rose onto there. It's quite a dark colour, but hey ho, it is, it will work. Well, it does work. It absolutely is, Sarah, an illegal substance. But that's what it smells like. It's outside. It's just wafting in. I'm in my conservatory with both of the doors out, with the doors wide open, so it's wafted in. Yes. So let's just soften that. See, it starts out looking very dark. There we are. It's now much softer. Friendly mop up required. Yeah, right, excellent. So let's tackle, I'm going to leave that, did I leave it on the other one? Did I put anything on the inside? No, I didn't, so I'm not going to. But right at, yeah, when I've ultimately finished, if there is still space on there, then, and I've still got bits, I may well go back in and add. Yeah, because I can't. So let's just pop that onto there, and then we're going to add some extra pieces onto there, and we're going to do a bit of paper disguising. There we are, that can go there. Okay, so let's see what we've got. We've got dunk, dunk, dunk. Hey, you see how to use lots of bits of paper up in one go. I don't know what it is about that other piece, and I could have, you know, that I just, it's just not what I like. There we are. There we are. That's going to cover most of that up that I don't have. No, absolutely not. No one laughing at your comments, my darling. You are undoubtedly right. It is an illegal substance. Although there are people who can now get cannabis legally, my darling. It is legally prescribable for some children, and therefore I suspect some adults, with difficult to control fits, and it's used by an awful lot of people. It's used by quite a lot of people with MS legally for pain control and to manage some of the jerky movements that they get. So it's not always now being used illegally. It is available on prescription, but you do have to jump through quite a lot of hoops to get it. There we are. I do think that there are a lot of people who take it who maybe don't have the, you know, aren't using it for the prescribed method, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking it completely illegally nowadays. There we are. So that, although it's not my favourite background piece of paper in the collection, it's now no longer completely irritating me. Do I want... And I am, yeah, I am literally using up the elements that I have, because that's cool, isn't it? There we are. Yeah, absolutely. quite a lot of the states it's medically legal, isn't it? Or California, I think, but in the UK it's also legal in some places. So let's just pop that out the way, pop that out the way, move those out the way, bring the book back in. So there's always ways of disguising things that you don't like. So I can now, I'm going to actually pop this one in, that into there, and have that as a flap going over there, I think. And that might mean that I'm not going to put a piece of lace onto there. Let me rethink that thought process, because I like bits of lace, and I do like my pages to have consistency. And I can always tuck that card in properly, but I just quite like it poking out in the way that it is there. Yeah, I think we'll pop that there. Now what have I just done with that piece of chipboard? Oh, there it is. You see, it's in front of me. I think we might pop that round that way. There we are. So that will work, I think, for me. That will work quite nicely. That can go there. That can go onto there. We might just pop that there. Onto there. Can go there. And I think there we are. On that, in that paper collection, there is one, because you need one. Maybe, yeah, I think it is only one. So I can now pop that onto there, because that links. And I'm not going to pop a word in, because there's a word on the card that I've got partially in and partially out. But I think that that links all of those pieces together quite nicely on that page. There we are. So let's move that over. I don't know why. Maybe because that type of tram doesn't exist in the UK anymore, and because it reminds me too much of parts of the US, and I feel that the houses are more continental. Maybe it's just me, but anyway, I'm going to cover most of that, so you wouldn't necessarily know. And I've done the same. I've made that as a pocket so that I can pop something else in if I want to. There we are. Let's just pop that into there. Into that. Yeah. I don't know. There we are. Oh, I like it. I am liking. Let's just take a piece of that, and let's just pop that onto there. And let's have a think about what we're going to put here word-wise. Okay. Or whether we're not going to put a piece of wordage there. Splendid travel, life experience. I don't want that, because it's just travel with family. I think that will work. That will work. So let's just take another piece of this chipboard that we broke up earlier on, and we're going to pop that into there. So 1 pack of chipboard, 1 pack of cards, paper, bit of ribbon from my stash. Yeah, I know it costs a bit of money, but you know. So, and lots of card and some card stock. So we've not used silly amounts of product. Let's just move that over a little bit. There we are, that's better. And go into there. Let's give that a little squash onto there. Let's make sure it's vaguely straight. There we are. So you can see why I end up with masses and masses of gubbins in my house, can't you? Because I then have collected everything, and I've got more and more stuff. But it all has a purpose. Well, that's what I tell myself, and that's definitely what I tell me hubby. There we are. There we are, we are. Okay. Right. Now then, ladies, a question for you. We could stop at this point and then next week we can finish this piece and do the cover with a piece of resin, one piece of resin, I'm not adding masses, or I can continue this and do the cover off screen by just putting some pieces of paper on. What would you like me to do? I am comfortable either which way. There we are. So let's pop that over there, that over there. That piece is going to go. That's a piece for there. Okay, that's the piece for there. That is the piece for there. You absolutely did just hear an ice cream van, Sarah. There was an ice cream van outside. Yeah, not wrong. No problem, Betty. No problem at all. Okay, so let's just pop that. See, that's too long, so let's just chop a little bit of that off there. Let's just trim you onto that. Let's just see where we're up to. There we are. I definitely haven't got time to paint today because I'm going to have to go and cook tea. I know it's very inconsiderate having to cook tea, isn't it? But I will have to go and cook tea. You'd love to see me finish. Okay, I'm not. Okay, right. Okay. Is that finished today, Sue? We'll have a simple cover. Nothing wrong with simple. So that flap is going to go onto there. Let's just grab that piece of that rubon. See, always use up bits, can't you? Keep going to finish. Okay, we can do that. We'll go for a simple cover. Not that that is an issue. I have at all. There we are. Okay, so that's that flap. Have I got still more pieces from the cutter parts? Yeah, of course we have. There we are. So let's just stick one of them in there. Actually, let's stick that into there and that into there. Let's just ink those edges because they'll irritate me. So that's the space for 2 more small pictures, possibly 3, however many you want to cram in. There we are. So that can go into there, that can go into there. Okay. Let's us think about what we're going to do decoratively on there. Let us have a think about what we might do decoratively on there. Again, we might just be keeping that relatively simple. Let's stick that onto there. Let's grab that pack of chipboards that is still going to. What am I cooking for tea? We're going to have lamb steaks. I think that's an empty piece. Lamb steaks and got green vegetables and probably some mashed potatoes because my Irish husband, well, Irish family's husband doesn't think they've had a meal if they haven't had a potatoes with a meal. I, on the other hand, am trying to behave, so we might be behaving and not having too many potatoes. Oh, having told you that was only one of those. There we are. But the little, we found us another one. That's okay. So when you look at the Stamperia papers and you think they've got all sorts of stuff in there, all sorts of little bits that maybe I'm never going to use. So my husband, having been in hospital fairly recently, is still definitely not firing on all cylinders, bless him. So I'm having to be slightly, well, normally he would have cooked tea. No, I don't want that. Let's see what else we've got. What? Travel, I think travel will work. So I'm having to do an awful lot more. But tea time isn't in this house, is not normally until about 7 o'clock, because my daughter is working today and she finishes at 5 o'clock. Don't you worry, Isabel, we're going on. We've got a little bit of a way to go because we've decided that we will finish. And we've got lots more pieces, so why not? Right, let's just pop that over there. So, okay. So this is going to be like the first one here. Yeah, that one. But it's going to open like that. And that is going to go on the inside of there. So, so we're going to make sure we've corner rounded this piece properly. Yeah. Unfortunately, Sarah, he's not going to get better. And life is going to get far more complicated for everyone in the household. But that is life. So that piece is going to go on there, but it's going to need some magnets. So we'll worry about that later. That's going to go into there. That's going to go into... Wow. Maybe that we might need to cut another piece of paper because we seem to have not managed to cut that to the correct size. Not that one, or is it that one? Anyway, let us just take a little bit off there. Yeah, it's meant to be 9.5, so that's okay. And then let's just grab a piece of white card, which we've got lurking over there. That will work. So 9.5. There we are. And 12.3. There we are. Goody goody. Now we've got the right size pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4. That piece that's the wrong size can then go over there. Excellent. Excellent, 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 excellent. And that's the patterned paper piece that can go over there. Right, so that's going there, that's going there. Let's just move that lot out of harm's way. We'll do that separately. So these are the pages for the insert book. Let's clear the rubbish out the way. We are cooking on gas. It's going to be a long. It is going to be a long live for everyone, but it will go onto YouTube maybe in 10 days' time. I've got a couple more that I want to publish ahead of then, and I'm deliberately dripping them through. I'm sorry if that made you all go a bit wobbly. Was not the intention. So that's going to go there, that's going to go there. Let's pop that over there, pop that over there. That's a standalone piece. So let's just Oh, let's just try not to be clever tonight at this time of the day. Let's just, there we are. Bit of that over there, bit of that over there. Bit of that over there. Let's pop a bit of that over onto there. Let's just stick a little bit of that over there. A bit more of that over there. Yeah. Eeny, meeny, miny, and then let's just take this piece, which is for the cover, over there. So let's put that bit there, pick up a bit of that, let's pick a bit of that over there. Excellent. We do have some more of that yet to go, but hey ho. You are being very patient with me today. This is a big project. I'm jolly glad that I've split it into two. So that is now getting sticky and it's losing its stick, but that's okay. So let's just because the music makes. No problem, Deborah. No problem. You know, I am very aware that this, having decided to do this, it's a big make. But, you know. There we are. Good evening, Uti. Welcome, my darling. It's a big 7 o'clock in Germany, I think, probably. There we are. Oops, I'm getting tired. We've just made a pickle of that, but that's okay. We'll tackle that. And by just rotating the stamp around, it just, again, it just helps. You get slightly different bits of it in different places, and that also just makes life easy. There we are. We'll tackle another bit of paper that I don't particularly like in a minute, because there's always, whenever you buy a collection of papers, there's always going to be some pages that you really like and some that didn't. Sorry, Sarah, what was I doing? I went to visit Liz yesterday and then came home and my daughter had cooked an amazing tea. I have to be fair to her and say she had cooked an absolutely amazing tea. So let's just pop that onto here. And then, but then I needed a bath, so I missed the live. It's on the list for catch up this evening. But then that might cause problem because the lovely Leonie Pujol is live at 7, so it might have to. It's just very difficult, isn't it? There are just now so many live streams in so many places that trying to watch them all is just very difficult. So this is 5 by 11.5, scored at 4 inches, scored at 8 inches, giving me flippy flaps to put in and add lots of pages. So this 6 by 6 album is probably going to be able to hold, depending on how much you stick into the pockets, 20, 30, possibly more photographs. Assorted sizes. There's always bits of photographs, so you might well have to chop a bit out because they don't, perhaps, you've fallen out of love with the person you went with, but still want to use the rest of it. Maybe. No, I'm saying, you can often crop photographs down, and nowadays if you print your own, you can print them in whatever size you want, can't you? So the days of 4 by 6 and 5 by 7s, with the 5 by 7s costing us an arm and a leg, have now long since gone. There we are. So that's going to go into there. That's going to go into there. I'm going to leave those to dry. So we're going to come back to our magnets. And I've remembered where I put my string. Okay, I'll keep my tape, because that's always also quite useful, isn't it? There we are. So let's just put a layer of tape not on the edge, intentionally not on the edge. Yeah. See, I don't particularly like this pad of that paper. Yeah. Oh, I know what I need to do as well. We'll get the magnets onto here. So these are little magnets. Let me squash those in. I've got 2 or 3. They're deeper than the other ones. So let's pop that onto there. Right, before we did that, let's come back to we're going to have to blitz that and do the other side. Oh, that's risking it, woman. Don't push that over. Yeah. Maybe nice, but maybe albums are more constricted to YouTube. I do not know. We carry on. It's making me use my stuff, and I'm having a lovely time in my craft room, out of harm's way. So that's always a positive, isn't it? Always a positive. There we are. Let's just mop that up and get that quickly dry. Mop that, because I'm getting impatient. There we are. Let's lid that before we have an absolute catastrophe by spilling it every which way, because that'll be the next right move, won't it? Of course it will, of course it will. There we are. It's a bit like waiting for paint dry, isn't it, doing things like this, but it just has to be done. It just has to be done. Right, let's just mop some of that so we're not here after the cows come home. Right, so the reason I did that the way I did then, ladies, is because I now want to pop this into here. Yeah, that's going to open comme ça. So if I glue, I might only glue it on 3 sides again because it creates a pocket if I want to use it. I'm going to pop that onto there, and let's just hold that down. If you're using magnets, you just have to think about how you put your pieces together, because otherwise you will find that you've got stuff where you don't necessarily want it. No, I might have been better with that round the other way. Yeah, you see? I would definitely have been better with that round the other way. But that's okay. We will not worry about it for the time being. It'll control the flap. Because on the other page I've got it, this piece facing inwards, but I've put it in with those pieces up that way, so that's the way it's going to be, and that's cool. It's really not a big headache. We can always manage. So you could have put those, I could have put these magnets further in, that might have helped, but this will work for now. There we are. So let's just pop that onto there. Have I inked the edges? Yes, I have inked those edges. And we will add a good amount of elbow grease to that crease in a minute, which will help stop it ping up quite so much. There we are. And that can go onto there. Right, so let's just open that and let's see what we've got lurking around that we might choose to add some bits of to here. Let me see, that's a piece of rubbish. That's always good. I like rubbish. Not. That's Dreamland. Endless Love. Those two pieces will work. So I am literally just going to add some of these pieces, use up more of these bits that we have lurking around. There we are, that can go there. Add the ticket. Onto there. Might add a little flower onto there. There we are. That's a piece of paper. So we can add that into there. Just going to sit nicely there. There we are. What else have we got? Happy Days, Freedom. Let's go Happy Days. See how good these rubons are, because these are some of the original rubons packs that Stamperia brought out, and B, that although this isn't the easiest way of putting them on, they're going on actually remarkably nicely. So that's going to go there, that's going to go there. I need to mop that glue up though before I shut that up, otherwise I will have an icky sticky mess, and I don't want an icky sticky mess. It'll shut the paint page. That feels dry, so that can go there, that can go there. That can go there. We've got the magnets onto there, that can go there. That will irritate me, ladies. I'm not going to hide from the fact that it will. I will have a think about how I can disguise that, but I will disguise it. I promise you I will disguise it. There we are. Do I want another layer on there? I do, but I want it on a piece of black. So let me just grab a piece of scrap back card. And I think you might need a bit more creative magnetism for sorting that out. But hey ho. There we are. That can go on to that. You haven't had to see me do any paper trimming thus far today, so that's always also quite useful. So let's just, so I'm just going to line that piece up with the edge of my trimmer. That's why I like this trimmer. It's got several lines on this piece, and although you won't be able to see them, I certainly can. And it just means that I don't have to measure any of this, but I will get a reasonably even border all the way around. That bit can go there. And that's another way of hiding a piece of paper that I don't really want to be dominant. Tickets for sale. I'm not going on a boat trip, so that might go onto there. Certainly not going on an ocean liner. So this will cover most of that up. There we are. And I could have added some string to close that would work, but it wouldn't have held this piece of the flap down. So let's see what we've got that we can pop onto here just to tie that in. It's not going to be impossible. It really isn't going to be impossible. There we are. So that's going on there. Let us take the word remember and just pop that up there. That will work nicely. Let's just glue that down properly, because that's not what's going to happen if we rush at things. There we are. Did I intend being live for quite so long? Absolutely not. There we are. There we are. That can go on there. Let's just add, because we've got them, and we can. A little piece, a little floral onto there to avoid that magnet. There we are. There we are, there we are, there we are. Excellent. There we are, there we are, there we are. Okay. We are nearly there, ladies. Wow. We would be nearly there. There we are. More of the same, but we have, I think you'll see that we have managed to use quite a significant chunk, but we've managed to make a good sized album with with relatively little supplies. Right. So, Are we on the home front, ladies? Yeah, we are. We are. See, I'm reaching forward. I've got all sorts of stuff tucked in front of me. That's just fine. There we are. I don't know any other way that you can do this other than just, you know, picking it up and going for it. There we are. There we are. Excellent. There we are. There we are. There we are. Right. We need pieces to that to go onto here, and also some extra embellishment. That really is going to carry on irritating me. I'm sorry you can't see it, but hey ho. Right. Eeny, meeny, miny. Let's just move that over there. Now don't go falling down. Actually, let us use these pieces rather than the others. So these, I've still got masses of rubons left. There we are. And let's just pop that one onto there. I might not put paws onto these. We might. There we are. That can go there. Oops. Let's just pick that smaller one. That can go there. There we are. I might not put another word on there. Right, excellent. Right. There we are. Have we still got masses of bits? Yeah. And you know, I'm on a mission absolutely to use the contents of this. Yeah. And so I didn't have lots of stuff sitting around. So that can go into there as a photomat. That can go into there as a photomat. That will work into there. So we've got a piece here. So that'd be convenient, won't it? There we are. To do this. I mean, I accept that adding all of these pieces really does actually take extra time and add to it. Stories that are not forgotten. I rather like that. But I'm not convinced I like that piece of that piece of chipboard. So let me just fish out from here. Wriggle, 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 wriggle. Come on. Out you come. Don't break. There we are. There we are. There we are. There we are. Pop that there. And then, so that can go there. Let's ink that edge. We did manage to break that piece, but hey ho. There we are. Well, not worry. We'll pop that into there. That can go there, because this tag then links with the floral. Okay. And I just like it there, so it's just going to go there rather than being wasted, because it will. don't need anything else over it, I don't think. Okay, let's clear some decks. Let's clear some decks. I'll give that a little push and a little push. Okay, there we are. So that's that. Yeah, so there's still plenty of room in there to put photographs if we want to. So right at the beginning of when I was making this, I chose some pieces of paper that I wanted for the front and the back covers, and I have a piece of shabby ribbon that I'm just going to, when I can see my red line of tape and amongst the chaos, there we are, it's in front of me, because why wouldn't it be? So this, I'm just going to run this all the way around the book. So let's just take our ruler and work out approximately. So it's 6.5, so 3 1/4. So it's I'm going to eyeball it because it's just going to be easier. 3 1/4, somewhere around there. There we are. That can go there. That can go there. That can go there. I'm just going to spin this. Get rid of the bits of rubbish all the way around there. It's a very substantial make. It's been done over 2 lives, Glynis, because it needed to be. And I'm umming and ahhing about doing it over 3, but we've done it over 2. So let's just take a nice piece of shabby ribbon. Pop that onto there. Obviously there are lots of different ways of achieving an album closure, so you choose the one that works for you. I quite like these shabby ribbons, it sort of fits with the vintagey style that I like, and that can go onto there. Okay, and that's a big enough piece for that. So I wanted this piece for the front of my album, and I just need to measure this now. Okay, so I could mount it onto another piece of card, but I'm not going to. So that is 17 centimetres. So I want a piece of paper here that is 16.5. Now this paper has a border on it, so the first thing I'm going to do, the light is changing, isn't it? There we are. Is take off that border that I don't want off that side and off that side, and then I want a piece that is 16.5, and that's inconvenient on this trimmer. There we are, so 16.5 there by 16.5 that direction. Okay. And then we need another piece that's 16.5. So we'll do that now whilst the going is good. So that gives me more scrappy pieces for doing something with, but hey-ho, we'll worry about that. There we are, 16.5, 16.5. And I've already cut a piece for the spine because I needed to have that piece secured before I did anything else. Okay. So let us secure that neatly onto there. And in fact, that's still a bit too tall. So let me just take off a couple of millimetres off there. Couple of millimetres off there. I think it's going to work better. So I've got those. So that piece is now going to get inked, and it's going to go onto a cover that will get handled. So I'm just going to ink that edge with my archival ink, because then if it's getting handled, it's not going to matter. Yeah, so that's the rationale behind that. So that will go onto there. See, I even wrote on there, front cover. You think I might have planned it? Well, I sort of did. There we are. I'll get glue onto that. Pop that onto there. Pop that onto there. Straighten that piece of ribbon so it's reasonably straight, and anchor that into place with that. Okay, cookie. Let's just pop that over there. Hope that it doesn't wobble in the process. Piece can go onto there. This is the piece I pre-cut deliberately for the spine. There we are. Yeah, it's definitely a substantial make. There's no question about it. And that piece can go on the spine. I pop that up like that. So let's just give these a good rub down, make sure they're secured in place. I thought that that piece of paper with the car at the bottom was just the right piece of paper for that. Okay. Yeah. We'll go there. And now we can do whatever we want on here. So what have I got left lurking over here? I've got tags. I've got that. So I'm going to pop that onto there as an embellishment. I'm going to mount it on more of that black card because it's going to pop better if I mount it on the black card. Just as, and now she's popping bits on the floor. Yeah, because that's really what I wanted to do, isn't it? Of course not. Of course not. I have a plan. You'd be delighted to know I've got a plan, wouldn't you? There we are. And just because I'm not going to use a piece of resin, doesn't mean we have to have a flat piece. So now let's just pop that onto there. Might need some more of that black card. Fortunately, there's scraps that I threw on the floor. I intentionally had them on the floor, I have to say. But there we are. Because I've got several different brands of black card, and I didn't want to mix them up. So I've got 2 albums on the go at the moment. There we are. So we're going to pop that there. We can have the car on top of there. Yeah. Get rid of the word welcome. That's okay. So we have a little plan for that, just to add some interest. So let's just pop that piece down and cover the park bench. Have I got a thing against the park bench? Maybe not. Okay. And then remember, we've been using the lace all the way through. Ow, she says, trying to cut a finger. So we're going to pop that little piece of lace onto there. Yep. And we're going to pop that there. And we're still using the same piece of chipboard. Don't know that I like that. It doesn't know that I like that. This is when I regret having taken the other one and popped the other piece on the back cover, but that's also okay. Let's just see what the piece of this looks like, or two pieces of this looks like into here. Actually, I really quite like that along there. You see, if one doesn't work, rethink the process. That can go onto there. And we've covered the bits that we don't want. Then we've got our car, which is appropriate for a travel album, isn't it? Of course it is, of course it is. And then we can add a title that I want, if I can find one that I like. And you know that piece of paper that I said I didn't like? Maybe no, maybe not, maybe not, maybe not. Let's see what's on here. Tickets here, okay. So these are all on here. There we are. There we are. We have a travel diary. There we are. So that then works onto that. Let's just hold that, is why they glue into place, because that's cool, isn't it? Let's just take that over there, over there. Okay, okay. Let's now take this round to the back. I definitely, right, I like to have extra pieces anchoring anchoring these pieces into place. Let's see what we've got. Over a sea of clouds. That will work, won't it? Over a sea of clouds will work. It will indeed. What did I do with that piece of chipboard that I chopped up? I think, there we are. We can take that off. I'm going to leave that off there because we can. I'm going to leave that as it is. Pop that over there. Well, we might stick our sign with our maps. I'm going to glue that back down in a minute. So that piece can go there. Right, let us just give this all a good squash. Into there. Okay. And onto there. Don't want that, don't want that. You see, that's going to get lost on there. don't want that, don't want that. So I am actually, I might find a set of words to go onto there, which I might put, I might pop that onto a little bit of black. Bear with while we carry on, because there's nothing like seeing someone making it up as they go. There we are. It's always more difficult, I find, when I'm adding little bits like this. But you really don't, I mean, I'll quite often put heavy embellishments, lots of florals and lots of ribbon onto my covers, but actually you don't need it. You know, simple works, tells a story. There we are. And I'm just going to pop that onto there flat. So I have got some bits and pieces, so that is covering some of the text that I don't want and refocusing the whole concept as a travel album. Yeah, so I could carry on messing, adding, but actually for me there's enough in there to be getting on with. I will almost certainly add some more pockets to use some of these other bits and pieces up. So we have our little diary for travel, and lots of flips and flaps and pockets, and we've used things all the way through. So we've got flips, flaps, pockets, trifolds, yeah. So whilst the going's good, I can stick another one of those in there. I can stick another one of those into there. So it's easy then just to add in extra bits and pieces as you go. So ladies, I'm sorry to have kept you for a silly amount of time, but that album has now been completed. I will go, I am not live for Pentart on Tuesday of this week, which is cool. So don't see me there. You will see me on Crafting Together with All Brands next Friday, which is also cool. And in the meantime, be safe, be kind to each other, look after yourselves, and I will hopefully, when I find the right switches on here and my computer decides it will wake up, because it will do eventually. It's always a bit of a nightmare when it's doing things like this. Come on Mr. Computer. I like it, I like it, I like it or not. Right, let me, it will get there, honestly it will. Let me just end the live video that way, then it'll upset the system elsewhere. Let me just, computer, it's saying no for now. There we are. Stop streaming. That's always good. Come on. It's having to catch up with itself and think about what it wants to do. It's definitely not happy. Come on. Wow. It's always good, isn't it, when technology decides to fail you? The computer is frozen. That's always unhelpful. Right, that's that one. We'll carry on talking while it decides to sort itself out. It's now swirling. There we are. And until that stops swirling, I cannot do anything. But there we are. So we'll just continue to go that. Looks like we've lost connection, maybe. There we are. We're frozen. There we are. Oh dear, oh dear. Let's put that over there and that over there, and don't say any rude words just because it's being a pain. End the video. That bit of it's caught up with it. Come on. Come on. Hopefully it's now caught up with itself. It's never guaranteed, is it, with these things? Doing something. Doing something. Come on. Yeah, I know you're not responding. I can see that you're not responding. Right, that is now